Hello, I'm Roxane Burnett,
And I'm Jim Self.
and this is our very first morning conversations. Welcome. This is going to be a series of weekly conversations between the two of us, addressing some of the questions that you all have emailed us. Topics such as
Death, health,
fear,
the dimensions and how they work, what is masculine and feminine energy.
law of attraction, how to use the rose.
Yeah, these are all fairly substantial topics. They're not, what should I name my soulmate dog and how should I... These are topics that people are trying to figure out that kind of play into the spiritual evolution and how the whole process of our growth is unfolding.
So, the first topic today will be something that many of us are feeling right now on the planet, and it's called fear.
Yeah, fear is a very interesting topic. And one of the things, you've got Syria, you've got financial conditions all over the world right now that are very shaky. You have elections in the United States, and when you start talking about the U.S. elections, I hate Donald, or I hate Hillary, or it's going to be terrible if, or I love these people, the country's got to change. Lots of push and shove right now. And a lot of that fear is running through your body. The interesting part of that, a great amount of that fear has nothing to do with you at all. It's this amping up. So let's talk about fear in a very simple way to start with. There's a number of aspects of fear. There's one aspect of fear that is really, really very helpful. And that's that aspect of fear when you're standing too close to the edge of the cliff and there's something that lights up in the body and it says, beware.
So, that fear is more about discerning.
Yeah, it's very much about discerning. And it's also literally, beware. This is a threat to you. That's a present time experience. That's happening right now. That's where you are able to, again, use your word, discern what do I need to do to make myself safe. Very valuable experience.
And it doesn't have to be a strong emotion in the body.
No, unless, you have that fear is like there's a rattlesnake and it's like, I need to do something now. That response mechanism is very real in the body, and it drives that flight and fight mechanism in the adrenal system. But basically, in simple terms, it says you are in some level of threat and you need to pay attention.
Well, the fear that I'm noticing now in a lot of people's space isn't about rattlesnakes or about cliffs. It's almost like it's not even about them directly. They're watching the play, the theater out there, and they're getting affected and they're getting fearful.
Yeah.
But it's really not a rattlesnake in front of them.
Correct. And so there's a couple aspects of that level of fear. And one of the aspects of it in practical terms is, I think I heard somebody in the bushes, and I am afraid that in a future moment I am at risk.
Future moment.
Future moment. But what happens in the future moment is many times the future moment never comes. And it starts to be something where we carry it in the body. And the real challenge of that fear that we hold, whether it's from a parent that I'm going to get yelled at, I'm not going to get accepted into the university, it's all future anticipation that has a threat or a negative downside to it. But what happens with this issue of fear, the real question of fear is, what's it doing to your body? And in real terms, that level of fear, when you hold it and it runs in that adrenaline, and it runs in that aspect of, oh my God, something bad's going to happen, and you don't have a real clear definition of, oh my God, what's that thing going to happen? It literally starts to kill you. And many people are in these stress levels,
Right.
with events not even happening in their life and they don't know why they're in stress. So that level of fear is something that, this future anticipation. Then you have also kind of real future anticipation. So for example, right now in the United States, you have a lot of opinions around this election, and the opinions are, if this one is elected, it means this, and that's just terrible. Same thing on the other side of that belief system. If that other one is elected, this is really going to be terrible. And so you get all this amping up of energy and fear. And some of it is real. It's like, okay, if this happens, these are going to be the consequences. Or these are at least what they're saying is going to happen. And I don't believe in that, and that's not good. Mm-hmm. So there's a reaction, a response, an energy in the body. It's still running that adrenaline and that stress and that anger. But there may be something that happens. So there is a anticipation of an event, and yet, but there's still an unknown. You don't know who's getting elected or not getting elected. But the one that is really the challenge in many people's bodies is this level of fear that something is going to happen to me. Or if the world does these things, something's going to happen to me. But mostly it's an unknown about whether I'm safe. And that context of safe plays out in lots of different configurations and lots of different manners.
So the fear that I'm watching in people around the election, in the bigger scheme of things, whoever is elected, the reality, it's not going to affect their life that much.
Well, maybe. This election's a little different, because in past elections, kind of the status quo was going to be maintained a little bit to the left or a little bit to the right. But there's enough people that are very disenfranchised. They just don't believe the government is doing something for them. And this is one of the first times they've ever seen an opportunity. Now, you get another component in it without being political about it, but in the manner in which Donald Trump is campaigning, as an example. The election is rigged. Those are bad people. We are going to defend ourselves this way. That's very emotional. That stirs a lot of things up. And so, again, not taking a position, is people go into a, yeah, me too, or a reaction, or I hate that, or that's not right, but there's an amping up. Now, the average person, whatever that means, or a person who's really not engaged in that, they're hearing all the ancillary noise. You know, they hear it on the news media, they hear it in different places. But one of the things that's happening is there is a perceived threat in the future. And let's call again that average person who's not engaged in the system, they're beginning to feel the energetics of fear of a grouping of consciousness that is beginning to push on their space. And that begins to be accumulative over time and challenging.
Yeah. And there's ways to eliminate that.
There are specifically ways to eliminate that. And so in Mastering Alchemy, where we provide a lot of tools, there is, in fact, coming up on the 17th of November, we're going to do a free lecture on fear. It's killing you. Would you like to know what to do about it? But these tools, these different manners of which to perceive fear, how to determine whether it's my fear or somebody else's fear. Is it something that I need to be concerned about? Is it an immediate threat? Is it really something that even has anything to do with me? And that's one of the big pieces. A lot of this has nothing to do with you at all.
And so a key is to identify, is it mine or is it not mine?
Right, very much so. And then how do I discern and how do I choose to view this?
Yeah.
And when you begin to make that as a conscious awareness, you have a lot of room within your energetic field to shift that attention point, kind of pull your finger out of that electric socket that you didn't even know your finger was in.
Right.
And so we'll teach a whole series of tools in that free webinar that give people choices to discern differently.
Now next week, the subject will be the same. It will be about fear, but we're recording next week's morning conversation before the election.
Yeah. So we'll talk about aspects of these components of fear again, and we'll talk about them in terms of what happens after the election. We have no idea who's going to win or who lost, or even if there is a win or loss, but we're going to take the point of view of you now are observing a result and it's running through your body one way or the other. Would you like to look at it and see if it's really worth running that through your body? So we'll talk about a future event before the future event
Yeah.
occurs.
So I'm thinking some really good homework for all of us for next week's morning conversation is to, during this time of the election, is to start to notice, how am I being affected? Notice in my body if there's a fear, if there's an emotion. Just notice.
Yeah, the reaction or the
Yeah.
pushing off or the yelling at the television.
Right.
Notice, we would never do that, but notice that. What am I doing?
Yeah.
And how is this affecting me? And what is my reaction and or response to this?
Good.
So-
Next week will be a good one.
Yeah, so we'll see you again next week.